Attorney William Solomon, who is going to discuss the Comcast license renewal.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good to meet you. Hi.
We're going to get the wisdom of Solomon.
You have the information, and this is another summary. Thank you. Good to be here. William Solomon is special cable counsel for the town. As you may know, worked with the town with Mike and Mark and the board last time when we did the Comcast license renewal, which went to public access, and also the Verizon license in Medfield. It's one of the fortunate communities in the Commonwealth to have Verizon as a licensee, so there's some level of competition. That's credit to the board and to the town. As you know, there are many communities, including in the area, that do not have Verizon competition. That's the most important thing you can do for some levels of quality of service, competition rates, and things like that. And Verizon is no longer building Fios anywhere in the country. So if you don't have that now, it's unlikely it would ever occur. They focus on wireless.
So how did they choose us? They selected us. We didn't do anything special to get them here, I don't think.
Well, yes and no. They applied to a lot of communities, and even though they submitted applications, they did not then continue the process with many communities. So it's a combination that they were interested in Medfield, but then at the time you, as the Board of Selectmen, you town administrating council, responded to that, expressed the interest, and what you found with Verizon is when you then reached back and said, we'd like you to come here, and you had just finished finished your at the same time as your Comcast license, they ended up coming here. So it really was a combination of their interest in you and you're expressing an interest to say, come on in, we can get a deal done quickly, and you did. So that's sometimes sometimes it's hard to, when you live in a world that has something, you're often the last to know what you have. And that's, I wanted folks to know that because of the efforts of the town and this board. So we're here on the again on the Comcast renewal. Again, I thank the town for having your administrator and your council fully involved as full participants in the process. That's not true in every town. It reflects on the fact that they get no glory for this, but it's work that makes a difference to the town, and I thank you for that. So we have two processes that go on. One is the formal process where you voted to issue the request for proposal that I'll talk about today. And secondly is the informal, where through now over a year of ascertainment, figuring out what the community cable needs and interests are, and reaching out to the Access Corporation, to others, negotiating with Comcast, we've reached what we think is a basic format of a cable license, the financial deal going forward. It's not fixed in stone. You do have that informal license. We'll be talking about that going forward, getting your input. But I just thought I'd take this opportunity to talk what those basic terms are that you've had before you. Basically, a 10-year license, that's the maximum allowed under state law. I think it's in your interest. The world's changing technologically, as you know, in terms of the future of cable. If you can get a good license, well then let's get that for the full period of time. So I think that's clearly in the town's interest. Cable service available to all residents, very critical. There are many towns that have the sort of density and other aspects of physical layout and population of Medfield who do not have cable service to all residents made available. That's crucial because if in the modern day, it's not only cable, it's internet. If you have folks without internet, their houses are worth less. They can't compete in businesses. Their kids can't participate fully in school. They can't get the selectmen's meetings on TV, on cable. And so that's something that the administrator and council made clear was very important to continue. It was in the existing Comcast license and the existing Verizon license, and that's something we've reached agreement upon. Our thanks to Comcast and their representative, Frank Foss, for understanding the importance of that to the town. The PEG Access Annual Support, it's now what you do is, that's for PEG is Public Educational Government Access, run here through a contract with the Medfield TV nonprofit. Currently, the license provides for 4.75% of gross annual revenues coming to the town and then forwarded to Medfield TV. That's going to be raised to 4.8%. The maximum allowed under federal law is 5%, but when you're at a 5%, you lose some some other fees that come to the state and to the town. So the difference is negligible. Nice increase to have a little more funding. Capital funding, $110,000 in 2 installments, $90,000 within 90 days, $20,000 within on the first anniversary of the effective date. And in addition to that, 0.25% of gross revenues each quarter. When you're paid the 4.75, you'll also be paid 0.25% of gross revenues toward capital. That way there's a balance between a fixed amount, which is in the town's interest, plus a percentage, which allow this to get done in this methodology. Comcast, of course, compares favorably to your existing license, and Comcast, of course, has lost subscribers, not because of anything they've done wrong. In fact, they're winning subscribers back and doing very well, but by the nature of having competition. Continuing to have 3 PEG access channels. The PEG access video return, that's the methodology of getting the signals from remote buildings, which is now your responsibility, back to the studio. And you'll have a new studio that the Access Corporation, as you're aware, of moving to a new facility and studio, and then getting back to the cable company head end, which is in Medfield. What Comcast has agreed to do is to build a fiber line between the new studio and their head end that'll allow them to return the signal digitally, rather than now it's analog and light. Digitally, it'll be clearer, better sound, better picture for the meetings, for public TV. That's a plus. The other responsibilities are yours. We're finalizing some of the details on that. There may be some additional cooperation between the parties. That's the final part of the license that we're working on. Cable service to public buildings, they'll continue to provide the existing drops and any new public buildings, and continue to provide basic service. And in a side letter, they'll continue to agree to provide expanded basic service, which would be CNN, Discovery, the channels that your schools particularly, or the town in an emergency situation, New England Cable News would need to see. Yeah. And so it's a tremendous license, and it works for both parties. The town has been good for Comcast, but Comcast has cooperatively, again through Government Affairs Manager Frank Foss, dealt fairly with the town when we've made the interest known. The final provision I note is the customer service office. That in the current license, very, very unique. It provides that there be a Comcast customer service office in Medfield, but really with an abutting community. It was never really intended to be Medfield, or an abutting community. Now that is very rare in a modern cable license. Like the rest of the world, companies are closing down offices. They're trying to centralize things, have it dealt with other ways, but it's still important. Now currently they are not in compliance with that because they are in nearby towns. Foxborough, I believe, is one, and one other town. But Verizon license did not have a specific customer service office requirement anywhere except for maybe one location in the Commonwealth. So there's no location called out, but very importantly, that this license on the renewal, as with the Verizon license and the current Comcast license, makes the FCC customer service requirements part and parcel of the license that you can enforce. And that requires a reasonably convenient customer service office that's open during normal business hours, which includes either nights or weekends, so that there is a requirement that's enforceable in the license. It just doesn't say what town that's in. That, frankly, was something that was important to Comcast, and the give and take that reflects what licenses are across the Commonwealth. So while it was important to them, the town still has a reasonable level of protection on that going forward. So with that all said, as licenses go, this is an excellent license in all respects, particularly the build out. We are now finalizing the PEG video return language. What I'd ask for on the formal process, which we continued with to preserve the town's leverage in the event that something unexpected happened, which I do not expect to happen. We sent out the RFP, and in that memorandum to the board, I indicated that what I'd like to do is have the board's vote tonight to replace the formal request for proposal that we sent to Comcast with the informal license that you received then and received again this time, so that they get back to us with a document that reflects the reality of where we are, rather than spending time responding to general needs that would be less relevant to what we care about. So if you're agreeable to that, what I'd ask you to vote is to, I'm gonna put it over there, actually I wrote up the motion, but the motion would be to substitute the draft license together with the PEG access video return needs of the town for the request for proposal previously submitted to Comcast, so that they may respond to that. And my belief that is because that reflects, as you now have and seen, what the license looks like. It reflects they're bringing this formal process in line with the reality of what's informally done. It didn't do that a few weeks ago because I thought it was important that we not send a draft license to Comcast before you as a board had a chance to look at it, understand it, discuss it, or ask any questions. Now, this isn't critical, but I just think what it does, it doesn't ask Comcast to read many pages of ascertainment and respond in ways that is off and different from the reality of the informal negotiation. So that's the thought process behind doing that here. I could answer any questions about that process if you like, and it need not be done, but I just think what it does, it simplifies Comcast's life to focus on finalizing this license. I believe in terms of the license itself, so I don't expect any material changes from Comcast. They did not have time to get back before this meeting. Do not expect any material changes. It's based in reasonable part on the license we just reached in Sherburne with the same government affairs representative. It's excellent language. What's different are the terms and conditions because they reflect Medfield's terms and conditions.
Well, let me just interject for your benefit that the Cable Access Corporation has been active participants in this process and have been giving us input throughout. They've seen this. They are on board with it, as I understand it.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, and I spoke to them again today. They've had the document. We spoke in person. If you had a chance to look at some of the ascertainment documents, what we had was very detailed operating budgets, capital plans, programming going forward, and hundreds of pages. That was done by the Access Corporation together with your staff and myself. And that reflects the needs, and what the cable process is about is figuring out what those needs are. I believe that this draft license reflects a response to those needs that is on the upper end of where licenses are. Now, nothing you would do tonight would commit the board to any particular license. All it would do is it'll have Comcast submit their proposal. Any license that you sign would be, again, submitted to the board for your review, your consideration. In terms of the timing of the process, in comparison.
Why don't we just kind of stop there, and if the chair is so inclined, get the votes you need, and then you can go on with what the process is going to be from here on out.
No problem. I was going to say that we are actually early in the process, timely, but as cable licensing goes, which is oftentimes late, we're doing really well in time so that you have time to make any final decisions going forward.
Richard, Mark, any questions?
Yes, I'm a little bit confused. Correct me where I'm wrong. What you're looking to do is for us to accept a motion that would grant this new language that is going to be attached to the larger license, and you said it's umpteen pages. And this is something that Mark and Michael and the cable TV board has looked through and they're okay with?
And more importantly, Comcast is, at least in principle, agreeable to this. So all you're doing is acknowledging that everybody is in principle agreeable and is just going to hammer out the details.
And then this then goes with this whole proposal, and eventually everything will come back to the board as a final product.
The ultimate license is like a pack of, most of it's boilerplate. The critical stuff is the percentages and the
It's right here.
capital that's summarized here.
That's right. And what they are, these these two different processes. This informal, it's like litigation. You litigate, but if 99% of the litigation gets solved as an agreement, the informal license will be that agreement. And what we had in that RFP is the 2 years' worth of very detailed plans going forward with some general legal provisions. And in the negotiation with Mr. Foss, it appeared that there was a preference, which made sense, to rather than have them respond to this large general document, since we were in agreement through the whole process with the basic terms, if we sent that out, they could focus on that. And from my perspective, I'd rather they focus on the good deal than focus on responding to sort of what I view as kabuki, which is real and real interest, but is not as refined as this. So it looked like both of our interests were to make this formal process reflect the informal. The deal that gets done, the license that gets done, will generally be, it was always this informal deal that's done. In this rare case, which works out, that informal deal will probably reflect exactly what they formally submit. So we're kind of bringing these processes together without any harm to the town. I'd rather them be focused on getting to yes and not on theoretically how creative they could be to change provisions that we think are good.
Okay, that's fine, thanks. Just a point on this 4.8, you keep saying the town gets, that actually goes to Medfield TV, not to the town, correct?
Right. It does, the license provider can go to the issuing authority or its designee. The money
It can only be used for the purposes
Yes,
of the cable.
That's right. It can, under federal and state law together, it can only be used for cable-related purposes, is correct.
But the town is not getting, it's going to TV. And then, this is just an aside, we've had a number, or I have a number of people that, and it seems to be those that are on cul-de-sacs, just some of the quality of the service, whether, are there boosters or there, and I have very little knowledge, but it almost seems, on a number of streets that are cul-de-sacs, that those are the individuals that seem to have more issues with poor quality of internet service and things like that. Are there such things as boosters or things that could be put into the town more to maybe address some of those issues, or am I
Yeah, no,
track on that?
that's right. And, you know, for official purposes, we have, as a town, regulation over cable and not the internet and telephone, but it all relates, it's all the same, based on the same system. So the answer is yes. They have amplifiers. Comcast has fiber to a node, and after the node, they have copper, and so it's light. Whereas, for instance, Verizon has fiber to the home, it's all digital. So there are differences in that technology. But that said, the wonderful thing about cable is that no matter how large the companies get, which, you know, is a different issue, that it's currently still franchised and regulated by you as the Board of Selectmen. And Comcast, to their credit, is very much a local company. So that you have any resident who has an issue on that and makes that known to you as a board, and you have folks who deal with that, that's an issue you can follow up with Comcast, that they usually respond to the town or the Board of Selectmen or representatives raising that. You can potentially have them here if there's a question. They have to meet FCC technical standards. There are means to test those systems. So I do think that in most cases, and it's easier if they have cable as well as internet, but those can be addressed. And if it appears to be more systematic, then I would advise the board to ask Comcast to come here to show them where there's a problem. And as you're exactly right, they may well have an amplification problem. They may have too many people on one node. A node can only take so much traffic, and then they may need to put another node. And those are things you can pursue and should.
And that would go through our local rep we have, that would be the proper avenue. the
That's right, yep,
local Comcast
yep,
rep.
and they're very responsive. They try to be. It's very different than dealing with telecommunication companies or utilities that aren't regulated by the town, that the process leads to responsiveness.
So what is the exact wording you want for a?
Well, I guess simply saying to substitute the draft license, or to substitute the draft license for the general license provisions that were forwarded with the RFP would be fine.
Okay, so I move that we substitute the draft license from the permanent one.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Oh,
aye.
yep.
No, go ahead, take your vote first. I have
Yep.
none of
Okay,
the
we've all
issues.
voted in
Yeah.
favor?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. You mentioned 4.75 for the PEG access fee, and then you said that you can't exceed 5%, and then you said we're gonna get 0.25% on top of the 4.75. is that considered separately? Is that not part of the 5%?
Right, and so what it is, as you said, it's now 4.75, it'll be going to 4.8. That's PEG access, what we call operating, so operating support. And that operating support, which is part of what's called a franchise fee, is capped at 5% under the Cable Act. Money for facilities and equipment, that's capital dollars, and that's right, is separate from the 5% cap. And so therefore, one of the advantages of this methodology is we're getting to 5%, apart from the set capital, we're getting to 5%, but we're not hitting these limits that would require subtractions. So
Okay.
4.8, not at the 5% cap, even when you add these state and local fees. And then separately, the 0.25% for capital, for facilities and equipment,
Yep.
is not under the 5% cap. It's separate, so it doesn't count against that. So we end up with 4.8% of their gross revenues, $90,000 capital in the first year, 20 in the second, and the 0.25% paid along with a 4.8 at each point.
quarter,
That 0.25% not part of the 5% cap.
Perfect.
Okay, my second question is, the selectmen are going to have a hearing on January 6th, which I understand you won't be present for. What is the purpose of that hearing, and how does it relate to what they have just voted?
Sure, thank you. And if I could be here, I would. And if I can make it, we're on, I also work as a municipal council, and we're on identical Tuesdays, but not today because they had a Christmas party. So the hearing is required not by federal law, not by state law, but by state regulation to say you have to have a hearing. It doesn't say the purpose before you sign a license. So one is meeting that requirement. So hearings have different purposes at different times. The purpose here I see as follows: one, you'll have the license. I would recommend you put the license online, the draft license, and so folks can see it. And if anyone has a comment, they can come and comment. I do not anticipate signing that day because Mr. Foss is not available to meet with me again until the day before or that day. So I think the hearing will occur, and then my hope would be with the next meeting, 2 weeks later, you would sign the license. So one is you would hear from folks about any cable-related issues. More importantly, there'll be a chance to look at the license. If anyone has a question or comment, that could be responded to. And that's the purpose, the public hearing and getting any feedback. If there's any particular feedback at that point, we can think that out and incorporate that in the license terms.
Right.
Generally, the comments are more general, not specific.
And our representatives from the Cable Access Corporation
Yes.
going to be
And
here
what
on
I
the
would,
6th?
what I read too is what I'd recommend is that Aditi, who the director and maybe possibly the president, but the director certainly, be here and do a brief presentation to start the hearing off after your introduction, to talk about where cable has been and PEG access has been, where it is now and where it's going forward. Then followed by public comments, any questions you have. I generally speaking, Mr. Foss attends those hearings. He may speak very briefly, but I wouldn't anticipate much. I think he wants to hear what's been said. And then I would recommend you close the hearing with the right to have another hearing if you deem that necessary. I would anticipate the license then could be and would be signed at your meeting 2 weeks after that. And finally, very briefly, tonight was a good example of Medfield at its best, and that's part of what your community television does. It connects you, the town, to your folks. Folks are, regardless of the people here, there are hundreds of people who are watching outside. It connects people to their community, to their sports teams, to their businesses. You can change a little shopping locally. I shopped here locally I knew it would be a large hearing, and I added to the Medfield economy. Those are things that happen in a town. Like many towns in Massachusetts, what happens is what you make happen, and part of that creative economy, that local economy, your Access TV adds to that. Going forward, they can add more. You shouldn't be shy to let them know your needs going forward, the community needs, the business needs, so they can do an even better job in making this the full community that it clearly is.
It is significant to point out that they're a business. They're not playing Santa Claus or some charity with the town. So we needed to justify to them that we had a need it for money, particularly the capital money, given the fact that the last time around, we got significant contributions from them. Not only from them, but also from Verizon. And it was to the Cable Access Corporation's credit that they were able to meet that standard, particularly the emphasis on the new studio and the needs there and for new equipment, et cetera, so.
That's right. This was a very challenging license because of, you had those two licenses that occurred under unique circumstances, and as Mark says, now it's a renewal, there's a different number of subscribers. Comcast has its interest, the town, as Mark said, and the Access Corp has its interest. So it wasn't foreordained that this was an easy license to come to, but through the work and the cooperation, it managed to be, as I see it, based on doing many licenses, a real success for the town.
My third and final question is, you raised the issue this morning in conversation with Mark and myself about some upgrade to the fiber optic system that were going to be required to connect the town hall and/or the school hub to the new studio. And there was a question of who was going to be responsible for paying for those upgrades.
That would be the final issue we work out. That last license, the town made a decision to, which is not uncommon, to instead of having Comcast take the signal from your local origination sites, buildings where you want to have live video, library, schools, town hall, instead of having Comcast continue doing that, because the town decided instead to obtain funds by which the town would build a fiber network, maybe partly wireless, and it would use it for your municipal purposes. At the same time, it could be used for PEG access video return. Now, in the renewal license, the Comcast view of the world, at least 10 years later, would be, hey, they paid the town those funds. They hope that they were used in a way the town's feels it was worthwhile, but that getting that signal back should not be their responsibility to the what they call the hub site, which is going to change from your current studio to your new studio, but that would be the town's responsibility. 10 years later, that's not an unreasonable position for a cable company to have. If it was 20 years later, I think our position would be, well, it's 20 years. You didn't buy that. We didn't buy that responsibility for 20 years. You need to do that or need to participate in that. So that in the negotiation, what Comcast did come to the table with is that they would build a fiber line to the new studio at their cost. You know, obviously they have customers who pay things, but it's their cost. And additionally, apart from the license itself, they agreed to, and whether they do this in writing or just do it, put in a higher level of digital equipment in the new studio that they would maintain, and in their head end that would be one step below HD, high definition, so that the picture and sound would be better, and they would also do that. The town would be responsible for the video return, and currently you handle video return actually through two Comcast lines, a copper line that comes from the town hall to their head end, and another one that goes from the studio. Since the studio is moving, there has to be a methodology to move the, if you want to go from the town hall, it could continue in theory going on the copper line, but it might be better to have the town hall connected to the studio, and then the studio where Comcast picks that up. Now, we have had, with your staff, met with your talented IT director and an outside company that does at no charge, and most places I work, I bring them in, that does an analysis of what it would cost to build a fiber system or further fiber lines. And we're going to meet with them again and look at what that cost is. The buildings are not that far apart. And so I'm sure one way or the other, there's dollars here that are not going to be, not tax dollars, but going to be cable dollars that will build that. But in looking at that, we'll be our third time meeting, or fourth time over the years meeting on the technology. We'll take one hard look, since we have a more narrow focus now, see what that is, and then have a discussion with Comcast about how they might assist or not assist with that. But I view that as a small issue because I view it as financially not a significant dollar amount. We already have a methodology of getting back from the town hall. I just think there's a better methodology that'll be a clearer signal, that'll be affordable, and we're nailing down what the price of that is, and that would be by fiber.
Good. Thanks.
I think it's got to be a little more complicated because, as they say in Maine, you can't get there from here. It's a short distance, but it's not an easy route. The fiber system that the town has now comes up South Street from the high school turns on Main Street and then goes up North Street to Dale Street, and then to the Dale Street School and to the police and fire station. I think it does go to the town garage too. I think there's a drop there. But then it's a question of getting to the
Getting to the new studio.
studio.
Right. Now, the one possibility is also looking at the compatibility of using part of your existing fiber network. Another possibility is to do a direct fiber line between the town hall and the head end. And that's what happens now. So what happens then is when the signal comes from the town hall, it overrides the signal from the studio.
Our
So-
head end or Comcast?
Comcast head end.
Which is at the town garage. That's that little-
So that's the other methodology, and, you know, that's fine. When you go to the studio, sometimes they can work with it, they can put on captions, but it's not necessary. So if that turns out to be the less expensive course, then it would continue with the same methodology now. Any signal from the town hall would override whatever's coming from the studio, and then when that signal ends, the studio signal would be picked up again.
I see.
So that's methodology number 2. So I do think, one way or the other, I'd probably get there, but I wanted to let the town know that was the final issue we were resolving, now that we've really focused on the smaller details to make this license finalized. Thank you.
We're gonna get together with Owen and Dave Maxon and.
public hearing is on January the 6th?
Yeah.
That's at our meeting?
Yeah, Evelyn's put the ad in the paper, so.
And then are we gonna close the hearing that day, or we're gonna continue it to 2 weeks?
I would recommend you close it, with the right to have another hearing if needed. Don't anticipate that. And I would anticipate, you know, that the license would hopefully be signed, and probably would be 2 weeks later. If not, then we certainly have time still, but I don't see any reason at this point why we wouldn't be able to have it done. And that would be done, as I said, before the expiration, April 30th. You'd be way before most communities, but more importantly, it'd be a license that serves the town well and serves the government well.
Excellent, good, thank you.
So, Bill, I had a couple questions, if I could.
Sure.
One is the money for the town is basically the $110,000, the capital costs that are gonna get paid over 2 years, 90 and then 20. And then the 4.8% of gross annual revenues and the 0.25% of gross annual revenues. How much does that turn out to be on a?
Sure. Okay, yeah, and all of the money in theory in Massachusetts has to be used for PEG access. So generally speaking, you can decide, most of the money here would probably go to the Access Corp for that. There's a lot of things they can do for the town, but we can talk about whether there's some cable-related purposes that might also qualify. But to give you the dollars on that, and these are just estimates,
I'm just curious. About magnitude.
at 4.8% with the capital, again, this is an estimate with an increase of 4% in revenue per year, but no increase in subscribers, and we don't know what the subscriber story is gonna be.
I know if you charge me.
For Comcast, I estimated to be $1.5 million over 10 years.
It's $150,000 a year, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's Comcast, yeah.
So that's to meet basically the operating
Operating
costs
budget
of the
of,
budget.
Medfield
Yeah,
TV.
that includes the capital in there too. The operating side is again, these are estimates, 1,320,000. That's based on the 4.8%.
Okay, so a million.
1,320,000, and the other 1,500,000 included the capital.
Okay.
And are the Verizon numbers similar as to what Verizon
Yeah,
is providing?
their numbers, their revenue numbers, and I haven't looked at the Verizon revenue specifically, but their revenue numbers are generally fairly similar, sometimes a little higher. They have the slight majority of subscribers in town now.
Mhm.
Now, I would expect at December 31st, when we get the numbers from the state in a few months after that, I would expect it's likely that Comcast will have gained some subscribers versus Verizon since December 31st of last year.
Yeah.
But as of that time, they had slightly more subscribers than Comcast had.
They're looking at the big picture, so it's not like we end up double dipping. So
Right.
Right.
we don't get our operating budget picked up twice. They
Right,
basically
because
are
it's a
allocated.
percentage, right? And on the capital, both sides made compromise. It's a good revenue town for the folks. They're tough negotiators, Ms. Foss is a tough negotiator, but in the give and take, this met both interest, and they were interested in not having the customer service requirement in the license, which we thought was fine, given the realities of the situation.
So between Comcast and Verizon, Medfield Public Access gets about $300,000 a year?
That would be going forward. So those are estimates going for 10 years forward. In the past, no, because the revenues have gone up. But that's going forward, assuming a 4% increase per year and assuming a steady subscriber base. Assumptions going forward aren't clear because of the changing nature.
This market's tremendously in flux. I mean, there was a year ago that they were projecting the death of cable, so, and now it's saying, well, wait a minute, maybe that was a little too hasty. But nobody really has a crystal ball as far as.
Comcast is doing well. They're maintaining basic subscribers. They're adding, their revenues are going up. So I think cable will go on longer than some folks, believe. And I think for 10 years, you can expect a sort of relative balance, particularly on revenues, and continue to go up for the reasons that even if the subscribership baselines, the revenues go up.
Mm-hmm.
I think the danger is the cable industry is down in Washington trying to lobby away any authority the local government has over cable and take away, and assume also to take away any revenues that go to local.
Sure.
So that's what we have to be
We saw some
careful.
of that with the bill on the state level that tried to say they could put cell towers wherever they wanted. That was luckily defeated.
Yeah.
Well, the FCC came in with their own
We
version.
have certain legislators that they're somewhat sympathetic to their appeal.
But some of the reps and senators didn't
Very
even know they voted
sympathetic.
for it.
That's right. Yeah,
They didn't even know what was tacked on at the last second.
Yeah, very sympathetic.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
well, thank you very much.
So I have
Of
one
course,
more
yeah,
question.
sure.
You
Take
said you had a municipal conflict, so you're on a municipal official somewhere?
He's stone.
I'm the Mark Sorrell in another town, but I strive to be as good as Mark is.
He's,
Well, for taking your night off with us, then.
No problem. I appreciate it. I enjoy the work, and
Which
I
town do you work with?
Stoneham.
Stoneham?
Yeah,
Is that where you live or not?
I do. Yeah,
Oh, that's nice then.
I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for your
Well, thanks for the
Thank you.
opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for people that don't know, the Medfield TV is moving down to the old Strata Bank building down on Route 27.
Yeah, that'll be, I think that's about 6 months away. Their lease at the high school goes until June 30th, and I think they intend to honor that lease. So, I don't think they've really started their work on the Strata building. They're still working with the architect
Yeah.
and,
Are they?
yeah.
They put a sign up in the window saying that they're moving there, but that's
Yeah,
about it. then.
yeah.
Yep. All right, we're onto our action items. Vote to authorize me to execute Department of Energy Resources contract amendment.
This is that $12,500 grant we got to study the 3 different sites for solar arrays. And we've spent 5,000 of it, or just under 5,000. We have 7,500. That was due to expire, the funding availability, December 31st. This amendment would extend that to a year from December 31st.
So moved.
I'll second it.
And this was the grant that Fred Davis got for the town.
Yes, it was.
Through
Yep,
his good
yep.
work. All in favor?
Aye.
We're next asked to vote to authorize me to execute First Amendment to the Wheelabrator Agreement.
That's what we talked about at the last meeting, where the tonnage rate will drop to $60 a ton and then go up, I think 18 months later, 68 a ton, and then it'll be adjusted by the same cost escalator that's currently in effect.
We're gonna say 45,000 or so a year.
Yes, yeah. We're currently paying, I believe, about 76 a ton, so.
What, Mike, how many years left on this contract? This usually?
I believe it's 11 years left. Yeah. What was it, Evelyn, 2006? Yes, May 24th,
Well, it's 20 years
2006.
with there was a
So
10-year, at the 10-year mark, but in advance, as that approached, you had the option to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
what
there was a
precipitated-
10-year option to withdraw.
That's
and
what
so that's how
precipitated this
negotiation came about, yeah.
renegotiation, frankly.
So it's actually what, so we're 14, well, we're almost 15, so it's 10, 11 and a half years.
Yeah.
So this amendment is what we discussed last meeting, correct?
Yes, yeah. It's
So
just
moved.
this, sign the agreement with the dates filled in, and somebody, Newton, discovered a typo in the former agreement, so
I'll second that.
We've got a lot of attorneys over in Newton. In-house attorneys, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of attorneys here in town,
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
living here.
Is that a second, Mark?
Yes, it is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Next, we're asked to vote to open the 2015 annual town meeting warrant.
So moved.
I'll second it.
And what's the closing date for that, Evelyn?
Evelyn?
Is it the 20, it's the last meeting in January, but,
I think so.
yeah,
Yeah, it's usually 4 weeks or so.
yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yep. So anybody that wants to put in an annual town meeting warrant has to get it in by the end of January, are we saying?
Mhm.
Yes, and that list I gave you is not an official list, it's just my guesstimate as to what articles will come
Nice
in.
guesstimate.
So if you have anything that you want to put in besides that, let me know, so Mark and I can get together and help write up the articles.
Now, if a
It's
citizen.
it's kind of like the state budget. Mike submits his draft, I rip it up. I submit the real.
Hey, I've gotten pretty good after 40
You-
years.
absolutely.
I could write something in I could write them in my sleep almost.
If a citizen wanted to put one in, how many signatures do
10.
they need?
For an
10
annual, it's
signatures?
10.
10. For a special, it's 200. So- No, 100.
100.
200 to call a special.
Next, licenses and permits. Council on Aging requests a one-day wine and malt beverage permit for the potluck Christmas dinner Wednesday, December 17, 4 to 8.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Zulu Gallery requests one-day wine and malt beverage permit for 2015 First Thursday event, 6 to 11:30 p.m. on January 8, February 5, March 5, April 2, May 7, and June 4.
So moved.
I'll second it.
It's a neck and neck, yes, it's a neck and neck race as to who's got the most liquor licenses issued, the Zulu Gallery or the center of Medfield.
Just for FYI, you could issue up to 30 so-called special or one-day licenses to any one licensee.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
Charitables can have an all-alcohol, otherwise it's just a beer and wine.
Medfield High School music alumni request permission to have a concert on the front lawn of Town Hall, either Monday, December 22nd, or Tuesday, December 23, 2 to 4.
Any comments on that?
It's a new thing, I think they requested it,
Yeah.
they,
Yeah, Chris McHugh had
Do.
contacted me and stuff like that, and she said they may or may not do that, but they're anticipating that they'll just do a little bit of that, so.
Well,
It's just
to
like
kinda-
just people passing by would listen, or they expect like a concert crowd?
No, I think just people passing by, and I think it'd just be a
it's
small
in the middle
group.
of the daytime.
Yeah, it's
wasn't it?
2 to 4 in the afternoon.
I did
something
let
like
the
that.
school department know so they'd be aware. We normally have the kids the day or two before Christmas. The high school
Yeah.
band comes through and with their instruments and singing, and
Yeah.
they do a nice job going through the different.
I think that's a nice little touch.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that. So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor? First Parish Church requests a one-day wine and malt beverage permit for fundraising event on Saturday, January 10, 2015.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Selectmen reports. Mr. DeSorda.
Because of the time, I'll just move quickly just to update. I had meetings with the Montrose School and the Historical Commission concerning the Jacob Cushman House. The gist of it is that they will begin to look at a long-range plan of maintaining that building so that it doesn't get into a state that it's so far gone that you have to tear it down. So they seemed very cooperative on that. The Historical Commission had a lot of concerns about the condition of that building. Ideally, they would love to like lease it out to someone looking, a business or something. But they're working on that. So I thought that was positive. I just compliment Mike. I went to the meeting he held with the warrant committee, and just kind of a primer 101 of how the warrant committee works. I thought that was very interesting. You always get something new. I went to the Wentworth presentation that they had. This one I thought was very interesting and more realistic. The first one, they could spend any amounts of money. This one, they had to have a price on it, they had to have a schedule. They focused, on the chapel area, and just some real interesting things. Gil Rogers was there also, and I think a lot of the figures that they were tossing around were in the ballpark of the figures of square footage and demolition figures and others that he and the committee had come up with. So that was very interesting. I also had a meeting with Mike, the family up on Green Street that had some issues with trying to get N-Star, and we were able to work out an agreeable way that would not cost the family. So that was good. And I don't know if Mike wants to comment on, I was very concerned of what happened with CSX pulling out on their commitment to have a flagman as we put the water pipe under the railroad tracks.
Hospital Road.
On Hospital Road. My understanding is that operation costs about $12,000 a day. They gave the town of Medfield a go-ahead, yes, you will have this flagman, and then the next day they said, sorry, we can't come back and get it until January. We tried to go through Congressman Kennedy's office, the Department of Transportation, looking for help. Basically, we were told that it's not under their jurisdiction. So I just have real concerns of, with CSX. I know they weren't happy with Medfield because we've put some pressure on them to try to fix up the crossing on 109. They've seemed to have solved the problem with the gates coming down and not going back up, but they have not yet solved the problem of the deplorable condition of the potholes and the holes along the tracks that we have to go over on 109. I certainly hope this isn't, payback time, but this is a serious, I think, setback for the getting that pipe under the railroad tracks, and it's going back on a commitment that they told the town they would have. Then the town goes in and gets the operation, and then they pull out the flagman, leaving us with with a bill. Luckily, they were able to pull the people out pretty quick, but I'm not sure if we got stuck with some additional funds over the weekend.
We did have to, the fire department put their light up there because half the road was blocked off, and it is very dark up there. They wanted to make sure people were aware, even though they posted signs saying the road was closed. The real problem is not so much that it will delay it till January. I mean, depending on the weather, that could be a problem. But the real problem is that they gave us the go-ahead to start, as you said, and then the next day they withdrew it after they had started digging.
Yeah.
So it's a logistics problem and a monetary problem of who's going to absorb that loss for the work that was done and then had to be undone. And for any equipment rentals that have to be absorbed over that period of time. The contractor has been great. They've been terrific. Oliveira Construction, if we ever need to give a recommendation, we'll give them a glowing recommendation because they've been very helpful very accommodating to the town, but they're in a pickle on this one, as we are. So our engineers are still trying to work it out. They contacted the CSX vice president that the State Department of Transportation referred to them, and they're waiting to hear back to see if there's any way they can reinstitute it. The other interesting thing in the email was they said you can do absolutely no work on the site unless there's a flagman there.
Mm-hmm.
So they have absolute control over the ability of the town to proceed with that crossing. They can stop you on a dime and pull your license if you go ahead without flagman there.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows you the power of some of these institutions. And I said to Richard, it goes to show that not all bureaucracies are in government. So.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to follow up a little bit. We're going to meet with the Water and Sewer Board tomorrow night. I believe that representative is there. We can follow up a little bit on that. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Paul Millett, if you can understand when you hear him talk. He sounds like Owen Okokoro, only he talks 3 times as fast.
Yeah.
What time is that?
He's gonna be, the Water and Sewer Board meeting starts at 7, and it's gonna be up here because somebody else is using the room
Okay.
downstairs. So we'll be up here, and it's 7 o'clock, and then you're on the first thing after
Okay.
that presentation.
And then, and just, the final thing was, my understanding is the Housing Authority had an election, does that have to come back with the Board
No,
of Selectmen?
they can't have an election. They have to request the selectmen to call an election.
And they
They've
have,
done that, they have.
they're
so-
coming January 6th,
Oh,
And-
right.
mutual
They're coming
election.
January 6th.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and the election, and, you know, people think of an election, they think you go to the polls and vote. It isn't. The election is among the eligible voters in that election are the remaining members of the Housing Authority and the Board of Selectmen.
That's it. We do
So it's
vote.
the 4 of them and the 3 of you.
Yep.
And I don't know, have they had 2 candidates apply?
They chose one.
So
They'll
they've,
recommend.
they in effect have
They've rigged the
Cau-
election.
Caucus, I guess they've caucused, I guess would be the way to say it, so, and they outnumber you, so I guess they shall have their way with you.
Yeah.
We refuse to hear them.
Yeah.
We're busy on January 6th, sorry.
And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
Just a couple of things with the holiday season and stuff like that. Obviously, with the tree lighting last Friday, I think it was, yeah, 2 weeks ago and stuff to kick off the holiday season. Is coming along good. Too bad that the holiday parade got canceled because of the rain, but that's the way things go. And I think that is about it. The trees are all done at the Lions. I think they're all sold out with the Christmas trees down at Shaw's and stuff. I help out there a little bit, selling trees, so another good year for the Lions
They
Club.
sold out?
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, it's one quick.
I must say, Hank has done his usual great job on the
Well, on
park.
the lights,
It's just
yeah.
terrific. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
the center looks really good.
Yeah, it's all LEDs now, no more. That was the last batch this year, so we don't have any more incandescent bulbs, so that was it, so we.
So we're
finished the
all
last
LED,
changing.
good,
The
good.
LED bulbs I bet are tougher, they don't break as much.
Yeah, they're almost hard to break, yeah,
Yeah,
they,
good.
you can drop them on the ground, you can drop the string on the ground and they don't
Because that always used to be
crack.
a lot of work with Hank having to rebulb everything.
We'd always have to rebulb them
Well,
every fall, yeah, so that'll be good. That's it.
So, I attended the Medfield State Hospital Master Planning Committee meeting. They're operating very efficiently, very methodically. And they have, Randy Carg is just producing excellent notes for them. Engineer, very precise, action items. Had my office hours a week ago at the center. The 3 people that came to see me were all wanted to talk to me about getting senior housing set up in town somewhere. Energy Committee met, and I don't really remember what we did so much, they're continuing to go forward on the solar photovoltaic. There was
Yeah,
the
they-
OTA grant that Fred was gonna get knocked over that we just heard about, that's been continued for a year.
Right.
7,500 left of that to spend for the photovoltaic siting issues.
And we're trying to set up a meeting with the representative N-Star to discuss what they will require.
The metering will work.
Yes, and that
Wastewater
will,
treatment site.
that will help us, that what they'd like to do now is hire someone to prepare an RFP to put out to bid for the sewer treatment plant project.
Oh, yeah.
But they also want to talk to Water and Sewer Board, because Water and Sewer Board wanted more information on the
That's right.
payback period and
Yep,
and
so
whatnot,
talk
so-
to water and sewer, and then make it,
Yes.
and then there was talk about getting an engineer involved in the wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, yeah.
Solar photovoltaic.
And then we also had the new energy facilities manager attended the meeting, so,
That was nice to meet him. He seems like an excellent addition to the town.
yes, I
staff.
think hopefully he'll be worth the wait. I think that'd be
So,
very good.
the 2 sites then, the wastewater treatment plant and the roof on the new public,
Right. They decided they want to proceed with one at a time. They don't want to get in over their heads, so they're going to go ahead with the wastewater treatment plant.
Get that done first, yeah.
Mark advised me there was a decision that came down from the appellate tax board last week that for the communities that have put them on private property, it presents a problem. The appellate tax board ruled that the solar energy facilities are not taxable by local government, so there's no property tax that can be raised on I think it's a personal property tax. they could still tax the land, but they can't tax the facilities. And for some communities, it was a case involving Westboro. but
Right.
Franklin is affected on it because of the project on the convent property or the monastery property, whatever it is over there.
Well, the thing is that a number of communities have entered into pilot agreements, which are predicated on the fact that it's taxable to begin with, and simply come up with an agreement as to how it was going to be implemented. So what happened is in Chapter 59 of the General Laws, which is all your taxing authority, Section 5 has a gazillion clauses of exemptions to taxation. And there's one which is predated the solar stuff, which basically says solar and wind power. The Department of Revenue had interpreted that as being exempting the use for, on a limited basis, non-commercially, basically, for the property or abutting properties. And the fellow in Westboro put in a huge array, 5 acres worth, and when the assessors assessed him, he said, no, the statute excludes it. So, went to the appellate tax board, and they said the Department of Revenue was wrong. There's no distinction in the statute that would justify the DOR's position. It simply says it's an exclusion across the boards. So, I've been informed that the Assessors Association, which is a statewide group, is looking at remedial legislation, but it's obviously something that needs to be addressed by the legislature. There's some communities that are gonna be significantly adversely impacted.
So the first, solar would be at the wastewater treatment plant, the second one, and that would be a town-owned one because of the fact that Bob McDonald has gotten this 15% grant. The cost was, I think, estimated by the consultant SDA Solar Design Associates at $650,000 for just under 200 kilowatt? Yeah, just under 200.
Yeah, 197, yeah, because there's
kilowatts.
a limit on the grant, and there's also a limit on the SREC credits.
Yeah, so
If
it
it's
comes
over
in at
200, you don't
197,
qualify.
200. And the system on the roof of the garage is about the same size, but that would be done through a PPA where you just contract out
Hmm.
to a third
Any
party.
kind of a ballpark timeline on that?
Well, they're moving so they've tabled the one and they're moving on the.
Yeah, the
Wastewater treatment.
the wastewater treatment plant, they'd like to put an article on this year's town warrant to get an appropriation and do it, but that's why they have to meet with the Water and Sewer Board, because the Water and Sewer Board is a little concerned about the cost of the project and the payback periods and the finances, whether it is, they're really concerned because they just put $6 million on the enterprise fund for the water tower and the water mains. And if they're being asked to fund another $650,000, well, it's a little bit, you got about $130,000 out of the grant. So it'll reduce it, so say $500,000, $550,000. They're concerned about whether that's justifiable in terms of the energy savings and the payback period on it, and they want some more information
I
on it.
think the Bob McDonald was thinking that it would save him $50,000 a year in electrical costs, so.
Yes, yeah. I think he was running about 110, for just the treatment plant, 110,000 a year in electrical costs, and thought he could save about 40% of that, so.
$9,000 a month for an electric bill.
So, and if that did go through, how long would it take that to actually be in operation?
Well, I think you can build them fast, I mean, they're just,
Yeah,
metal frames.
you'd have to get the bids out and award a contract and startup times, probably about a year, you're talking, I imagine,
The
yeah.
other one would go to town meeting, I think in 2016.
16, and,
And the issue there is that the federal tax credits run out at the end of 2016, so we'd have to get actually
yes.
online and built before the end of.
Was it online? There was one of them you only had to have started. You didn't have to have it completed.
Oh, is that right?
I think that was the one at the town garage roof. As long as you got it started by December 31st, I think you're okay.
What you talk about, a rental on that, a leasing rather than
Yeah,
right behind?
Lease it,
basically just
yeah.
leasing out the roof.
Yeah, it's not as
So the-
profitable, but you don't have to put up the capital.
Right,
So,
right.
so I think you get probably 3 cents a kilowatt hour from whatever they generate or
Why would
something
you have to
like
wait
that.
till 2016 if you're not putting the capital in? Simply because you get too many
They didn't want to jump, they wanted to put in 1 foot at a time. They didn't want to jump in a two, they're different types of projects. One is town-owned and the other is privately owned and leased. And they just felt they wanted to go slowly on these things.
If you're gonna privately own and lease, then that decision I just alluded to would have some relevance, because you have to take into account, up till now, those companies would be arguing on the leasing amount, you're gonna be picking up taxes for personalty. And so now, if that's not the case, then you pick it up in rent.
Yeah, that's one case where it's an advantage to us because we haven't entered into a contract, so we can take that decision into account and what the return is.
I also went to the Medfield Cares About Prevention meeting, and it was very interesting to actually have some high school kids come to us from a public safety class, and so we're gonna be working with them. There was actually, there were some things, looking forward to trying to do some things just to provide some events for the kids to do in the evenings on weekends. Medfield Foundation actually did some strategic planning, which was very interesting to do. We spent 4 hours on Saturday afternoon doing strategic planning and thinking about what the Medfield Foundation should be in the future. And the Medfield Foundation had a very successful Medfield Foundation Angel Run a couple Saturdays ago.
Is that a record number?
No, the record was actually the year that Natasha would have graduated. A lot of her classmates ran, and so that was the biggest number. This was like the third largest number. It was over 1,300 runners.
It was impressive. seeing
Generated a
that.
lot of money for the Medfield families in need, so that's excellent.
That's great.
Informational items. Mike, anything there you want to add?
Yeah, I want to update you on the security arrangements at the hospital. I've been meeting with the 2 chiefs and with Ken Feeney this week and Bobby Kenny Jr. to talk about what we're going to be doing. And the chiefs are, they've made arrangements with a company to board up the doors and any access points at the lower levels. They will be, they were up there Monday measuring them. They will go back and cut the plywood at their plant or factory or whatever, warehouse, and paint them red to match the brick, and then come up and screw them in to seal off the doors.
Good.
That's important. We did have some kids on the half-school day that did get into the chapel building. They were apprehended. Their parents were held. Their parents were notified. The parents were very cooperative with the police department, because the parents realized the urgency of keeping the kids out of those buildings because of the conditions inside. So we want to emphasize that parents talk to their children and make sure, particularly in that area of town, that they do not try to enter those buildings. There are materials in there that they don't want to encounter. And in some cases, depending on the building, there could be dangerous conditions. Sure. So they are, we've made arrangements to continue the security that the state hospital has had in place up there on a limited basis. We're talking about, the state had 2 people 24 hours a day. We've made arrangements temporarily for 1 person 12 hours a day. Cost is just over $1,500 a week, or about $83,000 a year. That includes keeping the trailer on site and the telephone and electric connections that they have up there. We will be looking again at the end of January about a more permanent arrangement along those lines. They have also are proposing, and I'll show you, this is a diagram that the chiefs prepared to put a fence. You know, there was some concern about whether cars could drive along Hospital Road and gain access to the property. The chiefs are proposing a 1,200-foot, 4-foot-high chain link fence that runs roughly from the old main entrance to the hospital down where that well, that stone well is, up to the current gate where the trailer is.
Okay.
They're also getting a price on replacing the gate with one that would be easier to operate.
Yeah.
The fire chief got 3 prices on it, and he's recommending that we go with the low bidder, which I think is an outfit from Walpole. I think it went something like 13, 15, and 18,000 roughly for the cost of installing the fence. I want to run that by the hospital committee before we go ahead with that. I don't quote me exact on this, but I think it was roughly 13, 15, and 18. Are those the figures there?
13, 15, 70, and 16, 8.
Okay. Oh.
So 13, 2.
The cost of the boarding up the buildings initially will be about $18,000. So, and if the police patrols notice any other areas where there seems to be access, the company will come back and do any additional work that needs to be done for additional charge. But the other thing is Chris had gotten prices on mowing up there and plowing. So we haven't done anything on that yet. I believe she's gotten prices from
Are
3.
they gonna plow on the existing roads up there?
No, they're just going to do one route around so the police can go in and get around, yeah.
Police can control
It isn't critical to do all the roads because, as the fire chief said, if there's anything happens to one of the buildings, he's not going to let his men go in. So as long as we have a path that the police cruisers can navigate to go in there a few times a day and
Do
check
they
it out.
have some kind of a remote control thing on the gates they
They're
have to?
talking about, yeah, like on Eric Road.
Yeah, is that what they're gonna do?
Yes, I think they're going to, tripe a gate, yeah, they have up
Yeah,
there,
they
yeah.
can just beep
yeah.
and go in there.
The gate will be open during the daytime because at least during good weather, because the water tower crew is up there now. They've started work on the
But
water
it's
tower.
not for citizens to be driving cars?
No. So, and then the gate will be locked at night and opened in the morning, so.
It'd be good to see if we could get the chief to maybe do more activities at the MEMA facility. It's very active already, but the more activity we have at the MEMA facility, the more presence on the campus there would be.
Well, I don't think they have any water. They don't have any, I don't know, they have electricity. I think their electricity is run by generator, though, I think.
I think so.
Is it, maybe it's connected to that line that comes in from,
I don't know.
from
Yeah, I thought they
Harding
were
Street?
about the generators, and I think I heard that they actually do have electricity, so they're.
Maybe that line that
Their
comes in
people are
from
alive.
Harding, yeah. Yeah, I've been in there. It's an interesting building to go in. Of course, Ray Burton is going to be moving his backup radio operations down to the town garage. They built a closet in there for him to relocate his radio equipment because I think the intention is once the state pulled out that he'd have to leave there.
Yeah.
But I think the presence of the water tower people will help.
That's helpful, yeah.
So
It's too bad we didn't move the temporary police station up there in the next year or two. while we were
Yeah.
building the new one. That would've been a nice.
it would have been good, but with no water and no sewer and very
no
limited
hardship.
electricity. Okay, and I think that's about it on the hospital.
Okay.
So,
Anything else?
nope. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah.
And we gotta go to
All
closed
right, so we gotta
session.
go into closed session.
It'd be good if we could move it along, it's 10:25. I
Yeah.
really need to get home.
Here's my
Late.
cheat
I'm late.
sheet. Let's see, the Medfield Board of Selectmen needs to meet in executive closed session for the following purposes. To discuss strategy with respect to litigation. I
It's
declare-
a Redgate Farm litigation.
All right. I declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body with respect to the Redgate Farm litigation.
So
The
moved.
open session will not reconvene at the conclusion of the executive session. And then we need to move this, I guess.
I move that the Medfield Board of Selectmen go into executive session for the following proposal: to discuss strategy with respect to Redgate Farm litigation. Is that good?
I will second that.
And not resume in open session.
Not resume into open session.
So
Roll
we have a
call.
second. We have a second, we need a roll call.
Mr. Fisher?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson? Yep. DeSager, aye.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.